Nice introduction. I'm delighted to be here. It's an honor to be able to speak at this event. You know, one of the great advantages of speaking around the country is you get to meet all kinds of neat speakers, people much better than me, quite honestly. And one of the guys that I've had the opportunity to speak with many times is a guy named Dave McNally. You probably never heard of Dave McNally, but he's a great speaker and a great author. He wrote a book called Even Eagles Need a Push. I always loved that book. It's called Learning to Soar in a Changing World. And I want to read you one little story from this book, which I think is kind of neat. It says, Jimmy's mother called out to him at 7 in the morning. Jimmy, get up. It's time for school. There was no answer. You probably always experience this in some time of life. She called again, this time more loudly. Jimmy, get up. It's time for school. Once more. There was no answer. Exasperated, she went to his room and shook him, saying, Jimmy, it's time to get ready for school. He answered, Mother, I'm not going to school. There's 1,500 kids at that school, and every one of them hates me. I'm not going to school. She said, get to school, she replied sharply. But Mother, all the teachers hate me too. I saw 3 of them talking the other day, and one of them was pointing his finger at me. I know they all hate me, so I'm not going to school, Jimmy answered. Get to school, his mother demanded once again. But Mother, I don't understand it. Why would you want to put me all that torture and suffering? He protested. Jimmy, for 2 good reasons. He fired back. First, you're 42 years old. And second, you're the principal. And I can tell you right now that the recipient of this award tonight certainly went to school and did very, very well. Probably certainly could have been the principal. I'm not much for standing behind podiums, but since the mic is here, I will do that. I like to wander around. But however, I want you to know that I didn't bring any notes tonight, so one of us are in trouble. Either you or me. And guess who it is? It is you. I can tell you right now. Because I can talk a long, long time. But I promise you this, that I will finish on time. And you're like, oh, thank goodness, Goldie, don't talk too long. We don't want to stay here a long time. Number 2, that you'll learn something. And number 3, we'll have a lot of fun doing it. And I'm going to tell you I'm going to finish on time. I'm going to do what YPYD. If you took a piece of paper and wrote down the letters DWYPYWD, you see that it reads the same forwards as it does backwards. And it simply means do what you promised you would do. Make sure you do what you promised you would do. The recipient of this award tonight always did what they promised they would do. No doubt about that. The second thing I said, you'll learn something. You know, when you stop learning, you stop growing. You know, that's important. Learning is a lifetime affair. People that stop learning, they just kind of hibernate. People ask me all the time, what's your philosophy about life? It's pretty simple. I live every day like I'm going to die tomorrow. But I learn every day like I'm going to live forever. That's so important. There's never a day that goes by that I don't read something or look at something that helps me to get better at what I do. And I hope that would help you to get better at what you do. And then the last thing I said, you gotta have fun. You know, I've always felt, don't take yourself too seriously. You know, take your family seriously, take your business seriously, take your church seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Because once you think you're great, you're no longer great. You kind of lost that edge. So don't take it, just always learn something every day of your life, which is important. People always ask me, well, why did you write a book about giraffes? Why did you write a book about bears or tigers or elephants? And the answer is pretty simple. There's a wonderful analogy to great lawyers, great physicians, great historians, great Citadel graduates. Yeah, I think that's true. And obviously, great business people. Because what happens is, like the giraffe, they stand head and shoulders above the crowd. And think about giraffes. You have to, and people look up to them. You have to look up to those people. And the reason why I think about the height of a giraffe, the average height of a male giraffe is 19 feet tall. The females is a little less than 18 feet tall. And you have to look up to them. That's important. Very, very key. One of my favorite places in the world to visit is the San Diego Zoo in San Diego, California. And you probably know a lot of, if you've been there, it's a wonderful zoo, one of the best zoos I've ever been to. And you probably don't know this, but every one of you in this room own a piece of that zoo. You say, you gotta be crazy. We don't own a piece of that zoo. Well, you do. It was funded by a guy named Ray Kroc and his wife, Joan. And if you know who Ray Kroc was, he bought McDonald's in 1961 from the McDonald brothers, right? For $2.7 million. Pretty good deal. Of course, it's worth $100 billion today. And so every time I go to that zoo, and the last time I was there, I always go to the giraffe pen. And when I was there, I was this male giraffe, about 19 feet tall. He was looking at a leaf on a tree that was about a foot taller than his head. And that giraffe looked at that leaf. And then he stretched, and then he relaxed. And he looked at that leaf again. And then he stretched, and then he relaxed. He did that for like 45 minutes. And on the 46th minute, that giraffe got that leaf. And people were like, well, I told you I could do it. Right? But there's a wonderful analogy there. Great leaders, great people, they stretch, but they relax. If you stretch, what happens is you really burn yourself out. There's no doubt about it. You just burn yourself out. But when you stretch and you relax, you know, you go to a movie, you go to a baseball game, you take a ride on a boat, you know, you play tennis, you do all kinds of things. And that's so important in life, is to stretch but relax. And that's what makes you really, really good at what you do. By the way, you probably noticed that the giraffe has the biggest heart in the animal kingdom. It weighs 28 pounds. It's 2.5 feet long. Think about your heart. It weighs less than a pound. But that heart is what gets you going. That heart is absolutely what gives you all the energy you have. And it's that caring. Heart makes you caring and kind to people. That is so, so important. In fact, in Africa, the giraffe is called the symbol of friendship. It's the friendliest animal of all the animals in the animal kingdom, which is important. And by the way, giraffes have phenomenal vision. They can spot a person a mile away. And great leaders have great vision. There's a verse in the Bible from Proverbs 29:18. It simply states, without a vision, the people perish. Doesn't mean you're going to die. It means that without that vision, you're never going to get to where you want to get. You're never going to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. You know, in my lifetime, I've been lucky to have met some interesting people that I think have great vision. And I'll have to tell you a story that made me think of it. I wasn't going to do this tonight, but I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to talk about today? Since I didn't bring your notes, I can do what I want to do, right? So I was working in New York back in the 70s for a company called Squibb Corporation. It's now Bristol Myers Squibb, big pharmaceutical company. And my boss was a guy named Michael Bongiovanni. He was a wonderful man. And he called me, he won the Horatio Alger Award, grew up as an Italian immigrant. He'd grown up in Hoboken and had risen to the top of Squibb. So he called me down to his office one day. He said, Goldie. I said, yes, sir. He said, we got a new customer. I said, well, who is it? He said, he was he always fumbled around on his desk. Some company called Walmart. You ever heard of them? I said, no, sir, I never heard of Walmart. Hell, people in New York today have never heard of Walmart, right? So he said, we made a product called Theragram, which was a big multivitamin and one of the best-selling vitamins in America. He said, I need you to go out and talk with them about it, see if they will buy some Theragram from us. I said, yes, sir. So in New York in those days, I had this big limousine that picked me up, you know. I'd ride down the streets of Manhattan, waving to people. And they're like, who's that little nerd in that car? So that day I was going out to we always flew out of Newark Airport in those days. So I went to Newark, had to fly to Arkansas, to Little Rock. I had never been to Little Rock in my life. And once I got to Little Rock, I had to go to Bentonville. So I was okay. So I got on the plane to go to Bentonville, and we're flying. It's not a long flight. And as we're getting close to Bentonville, those planes fly pretty low to the ground. And I thought, I wonder what kind of limo is going to pick me up. I bet it's going to be one of those long stretch ones with soda water and a TV in the back and newspapers. It's going to be great. Well, I kept looking out. There was no limo down there. How could we find low to the ground? A bunch of old cars and trucks. And I thought, well, I don't know what's happening here. Maybe they don't know I'm coming. So the plane landed. It was a dirt runway in those days. The plane landed, dirt goes off over the plane. And I walk over to the door flops down. And I walked out, and I see this gentleman coming towards me. And I thought, must be the airport maintenance guy. I guess he wants to tell me where my limo is. And I'll figure that out. So he walked, and as he walks up to me, I get a little bit of picture of him. And he says, and I look, he said, it looks like he's got on LL Bean boots. He's got on what I thought was a designer jacket. But as he got closer, I realized it was a tweed coat with all the tweed hanging out of it. And he had on, I'm telling you, he had on pants that had never been pressed in their life. They were like stovepipes. So he walks up to me, and he says, Mr. Gouldthrope? I said, yes, sir. He said, hi, I'm Sam Walton. Oh, my God. He said, we're going to be doing some business together. I thought I'd come out and meet you. I said, well, thank you, sir. He said, you don't mind riding my truck, do you? And I said, no, sir. Now, I grew up in the country, and we had trucks. I'm telling you, this is the dirtiest truck I've ever seen in my life. It is a nasty looking truck, mud all over it. So we get over to this truck, and I'm getting ready to open the door. And he says, you don't mind if old Roy rides up front, do you? Well, any of you that know anything about Walmart, they sell old Roy dog food, and that was his dog. So I get in the truck, this dog jumps in on my lap. This is the nastiest dog I've ever seen in my life. This dog's got his tongue in my mouth. He's shedding all over. I'm trying to roll down the window in this truck. Nothing works in this truck at all. So he said, we're gonna go to my office. I said, thank you, sir. I can't wait to get there. So we got over to the office, and we sat down, and what a wonderful man he was. Really smart. A lot smarter than me, I gotta tell you that. And he says, hey, son, I thought, gosh, I'd like to be your son. He said, would you like to go to one of my stores? I said, yes, sir. I'd love to go to one of these stores. He said, let's go. Get back in that old truck. Old Roy never rides in the back, I can tell you right now. Oh, the suit's ruined, I'm telling you right now. So I figured we're going to drive to a truck. Oh, no. Mr. Walton, if you know anything about it, he flew his own plane. We go back to that little two-seater airport with a two-seater plane. Might as well have been a three-seater because old Roy was right up front. We were up the line flying the planes up and down. I thought, I don't even want the business. God knows, give it to Lily, give it to Merck, give it to somebody else. I don't want this business that bad. So we landed some little town. I'm not sure where it was, quite honestly. It's been too many years ago. And he said to me, he said, let's go in, son. I said, yes, sir. And he walked in, which made him very special, which makes the winner of the award tonight very special. And he walked in and he saw this lady that had a display. It was around Valentine's Day. I do remember that very well. And he walked up and he said, hi, I'm Sam Walton. She had this big smile on her face. He said, Barry, I want to tell you, this is the very best display I've ever seen. She smiled on her time. And he talked about it. He said, look, and in those days, what Walton did, and I didn't know this at that time, on every Saturday morning, all the stores, because he only had about 400 stores in those days, called in, and they talked about what was going on. And he told Mary, I want to put you on the Sam Walton ad on Saturday morning. Interesting. Just so, and this lady talked about making somebody feel good. And that's what this man was all about. So we spent a lot of time in the store, and he said to me, Hugh, he said, you want to fly back with me? I said, I'll take a cab. I said, I'll take a cab, sir. I said, fine. I'll be glad to take a cab. So I got back to New York the next day. Went in to see Mr. Bon Giovanni, and he said, did you get the business? I said, yes, sir, I got the business. Here's the contract. He said, oh, my God. like you gave it away. I said, good thing I didn't pay him to get the business. That man was too smart for me, I can tell you right now. But what made him so special? He didn't know me from Adam. But he took the time to be kind and nice and to welcome me. You kind of felt like it was wonderful to be there. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. And just somebody really special. So, someone with wonderful vision. And you know what's happened today if you can see what's happened to Walmart. He had that great vision. He saw things that other people didn't see. And that's what the recipient of our award tonight does. He sees things that other people don't see. By the way, giraffes are very, very competitive. They can kick in all four directions with all 4 feet. And when you've been kicked, you have been kicked. And they know what it takes to be good and what they're going to do. Very, 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 very important. Giraffes also are very, very fast. They can run about 35 to 40 miles per hour. And when they run, they don't run this way. They put all 4 feet down at the same time and they glide to where they go. Not only are they fast, they are very efficient at what they do. Unbelievable animals. And one of the things I love most about giraffes, and I think it's neat, there are 9 different species of giraffes. And the way you tell the difference in the species is by the reticulation. Some have square reticulations, some have oblong, some have rounded. But to the giraffe, it's kind of fascinating. To the giraffe, he only sees giraffe. He doesn't see old, he doesn't see young, he doesn't see fast, he doesn't see slow, or she doesn't see slow, he or she doesn't. They don't see heavy, they don't see light, they don't see black, and they don't see white. Wouldn't the world be a much better place if that could happen, if people would get that feeling about that? It'd be a great place. One of the other things I can tell you a lot about giraffes, but remember I said like I did with YPWD, so I know I'm watching my time, so I don't want to run you along too long. One of the things I love about giraffes, they are great communicators. And you just say, wait a minute, what do you mean they're great communicators? They can't talk. Well, what happens is, the only sound that makes, whoop, that's the only sound a giraffe makes. But the way they communicate is with their eyes. They have these soft, caring eyes. And they communicate by moving their bodies and showing what's going on. A good example would be, one of the enemies of the giraffe is the lion. That's the biggest enemy of giraffes in Africa. And the only way the lion can get to the giraffe is from behind. But the giraffes are smart enough and communicate enough that when they back up to like a cliff or so forth, they make sure they don't do that because the lion can get them from behind, which is kind of fascinating. But being a communicator is great. And certainly our recipient tonight is a great communicator. It's obvious, and once you see what happens, you'll figure that out. The effectiveness of one's life is determined by the effectiveness of one's communication skills. People get lost. Deals aren't made. Divorce occurs because people fail to talk with one another or the other. It's a two-way street, and communication is so key to one's success. And the great leaders in the world are great communicators. And I would tell you this, that the 6 most important words in the English language are, I admit that I was wrong. Think about that. I admit that I was wrong. It makes me think back in the 70s when Richard Nixon was in the White House and Watergate came along, and all the dummy had to do was to say, can you believe he broke into Watergate? That was the dumbest thing we ever did. But he tried to hide it. He tried to cover it up. And look what happened to him. It's amazing what happened to him. If Bill Clinton had said, no, I won't touch that. Let me see. The 5 most important words in the English language are, you did a great job. The #1 need of Americans is the need to be recognized. And when you tell people you did a great job, watch them smile, watch their eyes light up. So, so important. And it's amazing to know people that never thank the people that they're working with or seeing, or could be certainly in a volunteer organization, that you did a great job. That's so important. The four most important words in the English language. What do you think? You want to be a good communicator, start your conversation on, if you're talking about a real interesting subject, is what do you think? The three most important words. Could you please? As opposed to do that. You attempt to do that, I got two words for you. And it ain't happy Rotary, I can tell you right now. The two most important words you all know, what would that be? Thank you, absolutely. People love to be thanked for a job well done. And again, our recipient tonight is very good at thanking people for that. And the most important word in the English language, the single most important word is what?
Please?
It's we. It's all of us working together as a Rotary team to make sure we can accomplish what we have to do. That's so important. And the least important word, I used to get letters in my office when I was working. People that wanted to come to work with our company. And I would look the letter, go through the letter and scan it and say, I count I, me, or my 15 to 20 times. And I would always send it down to, we didn't have a human resources team, we had a vice president of people. And I would send it down to our vice president of people with a comment, methinks he protests too much. You know, if you're good, you never have to tell a soul. They understand by your actions and what you do. I'm looking at my watch, because I did what I do already, right? I'll make sure I'm going to do that for you. Another one of the great people I had the privilege of working with, very lucky in my life, was a gentleman who you probably have heard his name before, was Ross Perot. And I worked a lot with Ross Perot over a number of years. A wonderful man, nice guy, and someone that you could learn a lot from. And so I was there one time in his office. He was in Plano, Texas, is where his office was. And he said to me, now Goldie, he said, you want to know what it takes to be a very successful person? I said, oh yeah, because you're pretty successful, Ross. He said, it's all in the word tip. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, it's all in the word tip. The T is to create trust. Make sure you create trust, because people then will follow you everywhere you go. They know that they can count on your word. I said, that's pretty daggone good. He said, the I is to operate with integrity. He said, knowing there's no right way to do a wrong thing. No right way to do a wrong thing. And the P, and it's my favorite word in the whole world, is to have a passion for what you do. Love what you do and do what you love. And you'll be so daggone successful at it. There's no doubt about it. I was thinking back at the table back there a while ago, I thought, how am I gonna close this off? I promised Barry I wouldn't talk any more than 20 minutes, and that's about where it is right now, close to that. And I thought, what can I do? And I had a thought. Thinking of the person that's getting the award tonight made me think of this. Back in 1881, there was a young man born in Birmingham, England. His name was Edgar Guest. And Edgar Guest and his family moved to the United States in 1891 because there were no jobs in Birmingham. And they moved to Detroit, Michigan, which was some jobs there, obviously a little better than Birmingham. And unfortunately, his father, when they got there, got sick and lost his job. And so Edgar's mother had to go to work, scrubbing floors and working at night. Still not enough money, he had some brothers and sisters. So he had to go to work at age 14. And he went to work at the Detroit Free Press, which is the great Detroit newspaper. If you've ever been to Detroit, it's a wonderful newspaper. And he started off as a copy boy and then became a reporter. He worked at Detroit Free Press for 65 years. And if some of you might have remembered this, that back in those days, he wrote a column that was syndicated in over 300 newspapers nationwide, a great column. And he was known, and he was a big poet. He was known as the people's poet. He wrote poems that people truly understand. You know, sometimes you read a poem that says, well, the bird flew into the nest, and he flapped his wing, and his beak went up. What the hell is he talking about? I don't even understand that poem. And he wrote wonderful poems. In his lifetime, he wrote over 11,000 poems. No doubt about it. And a great poet. If you ever want to read some great poetry, it's really wonderful. So I was thinking tonight, I know a lot of his poems, but I was thinking tonight, what would be the one that describes best the recipient of this award? And there's a poem called Sermons that's really a great Edgar Guest poem. And it simply goes, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather one would walk with me than merely point the way. For the eye's a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Find counsel is confusing, but example is always clear. And the best of all, the preachers are the ones that live their creed. For the seed of good in action is what everybody needs. I can soon learn to do it if you let me see it done. I can watch your hands in action, but your tongue too fast may run. And the lectures you deliver may be very wise and true, but I never get my lessons from observing what you do. For I may misunderstand the high advice you give. There's no misunderstanding on how you act and how you live. No misunderstanding on how you act and how you live. And that is so descriptive of our recipient tonight, who has spent a long time in Rotary, probably over 50 years, and someone that is so deserving of this award. I want to thank you for listening to me. It's nice to be here. And Barry, I think you're on next to talk about who the recipient is, right?
We can stand right there.
I got you.
You've already given it.